For the evening. I think it's important to have this conversation about black support. I'm looking at the difference between how black people support one another and how white people do it. Most white people, whether they're calling a black person the N word or whenever they get involved in anything racial, you know, they can instantly become millionaires, because these white people will contribute to their fund to defend themselves or whatever, because most of the time when they being racist like that, they're more than likely lose their jobs. So they're sustained by the white community through GoFundMe or, other means, right? But it's different for black people. Keith Porter was murdered by an ICE agent. I think his GoFundMe might be like 39,000 right now, whereas Renee Good, she's over 1 million. I get it, they have a bigger population. I get that part. But historically, when you look at black support, from it doesn't have to be monetarily. When you look at Muhammad Ali, and Dr. King, Malcolm X, we've never supported them like we should have. You know what I'm saying? Nobody made sure Malcolm X had a house to live in while he was leading, even though the Nation of Islam was sort of like paying for where he stayed. But I'm talking about the general public. Um, Dr. King, same thing. Nobody was making sure his kids were okay. It wasn't until after his death. You know what I mean? Even Colin Kaepernick, right? He lost his career. We never supported him. We continue to watch the NFL. Uh, Muhammad Ali lost his career for standing for black people. And even myself, I mean, there's so much more that I can do. I'm over here, every day, sort of like begging black people to purchase a book for me, right? Um, and I'm not even getting 1% support on that. And I can go all the way back in my career when I was working as a teacher. I remember one year I taught special ed, and they were abusing these black kids. Okay, and I stood up. I needed to say something because I wasn't gonna let that shit happen. Other black teachers stayed quiet, you know, and because I stood up alone, I was suspended. I was suspended without pay for about 6 months. Just imagine being without a job, no money for 6 months, and you have at the time I had no kids, of course, but I still had my rent, I still had my car, insurance and all that stuff to pay. And none of these teachers, these black teachers, supported me. It was as if they didn't care about these black children, as much as I did. And finally, of course, I went through the steps with the New York public school system with my complaints. And when I won my case, they had to retro pay me for all these times that I was suspended. And when I came back to the school, the teachers are standing on both sides of the aisle applauding. Like, I don't need your fucking applause. You understand what I'm saying? You should have stood with me because you knew what was happening. You knew these kids were getting abused because they're special ed, and it was at the order of the principal. You understand? We have a problem supporting people. And I mean, there are other positions that I've had where I stood up, for my employees or my kids, because I've always worked with kids. I was a high school teacher, and then I ran a program for that was getting kids off the street, getting them ready for college. I just didn't like the attitude of the person, the executive director, toward black children, and I stood up again. This time I lost my job. You understand? But I'm a fighter. You know what I'm saying? I don't think about consequences like most people. You know what I'm saying? However, I also know that if I'm put in a position to win, meaning if I'm getting enough support from the black community, then there's a lot more that I can do, because I'm still limited as far as what I can do when I know my livelihood can be taken away and without any support. Now I have kids, I can't act the way that I acted when I was younger, when I had no children. So I'm responsible for, two more people, but overall, I think it's important for black people to try to do a better job supporting the people that stand with them, because we supporting dumb shit. You know what I mean? We sending money to people that are denigrating black women, denigrating black men, the people who aren't fighting for black people, the people who are more entertaining and just downright mean to the community. You know what I'm saying? These are the people that we support. We don't support the people that are uplifting the community. And that's a huge problem. And like I said, historically, when you look at it, it's almost like we have this crab in the barrel mentality. We don't want anybody to win, you know, or have a better, you know, no matter what they're doing, you know, even though they're serving us, we seem to have an issue with them coming up, except the preachers, the pastors. You know, they'll go to church every day. The pastor will ask for a Bentley. They have no problem with that. You know, he'll live in a mansion. It's fine for him to live in a mansion because he was ordained to do that. You know what I mean? But the regular black people, like I said, Colin Kaepernick hasn't worked since he stood up for black people. You know what I'm saying? But black people never collectively did anything to make sure he was given a second chance. We never boycotted anything. We never did shit. Well, personally, I boycotted, but collectively, we didn't do anything. You know what I'm saying? We let these people win. These people are behaviorists. You know what I'm saying? They know our behavior. They know how we're going to react to situations. That's why they stay in control. And we have to force them to relinquish that control because they also understand, you know, the art of selling to black people. They understand the $1.6 trillion buying power that black people have generally go to white businesses because black people are not supporting black businesses like they should. Most of that money, you know, white people understand goes back to them. When you look at athletes, when you look at singers, actors, you look at their agents, their managers, their accountants, you know, mostly white people, because we don't support black people as much as we should. And we don't even trust one another because white people have managed to psychologically cleanse us of trust. And it's a huge problem. You know, look at how many millionaires and billionaires, you know, black billionaires in Hollywood and the entertainment industry, they can't even come together to create an industry together that they would own. You know, it shouldn't take me, a regular guy with the regular, you know, regular businesses to try to launch a social media site. That should be Jay-Z, 50 Cent, Dr. Dre. All these guys should put their heads together, right? To build something like that. It shouldn't be Facebook. I mean, we shouldn't be on Instagram anymore, Facebook, YouTube. No, we should have our own. But the problem is, it's the support. We're always competing. These people have put us in a position where we're constantly competing. And through this competition, we're not supporting each other enough. You know what I mean? That's why they always comparing Michael Jordan to LeBron or Kobe or Michael Jackson to Prince. You know, they've always put us in competition with one another. Black hip hop, reggae, black music is the only form of music, genre of music, where black men are constantly battling each other. You understand? No other form of music does that. But black men do that in hip hop. We do it in reggae. We do it in other forms of music too. But we're the only people doing that shit because these people know how to keep us divided. You know what I mean? And when you're divided, there's no support. You don't have a support system because you're easily conquered. And I think it's important for black folks to understand what it takes, man. And again, I hate talking about my latest books all the time, but this is why I wrote these books. A Time for Revenge, the Black Revolution, because I want black people to understand, you know, the blueprint that's in place for division, you know, and the tactics to conquer, you know. And we're not paying enough attention to those tactics, to their history, to everything else that they've done to make sure that, you know, black people, Caribbean people, African people are like all over the place. We're completely divided. We're not coming together to build anything of, you know, substantial that can basically sustain us. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't pay attention to our history, you know, because the history of our forefathers, if you notice, whether you go to Haiti, Jamaica, or even here, um, black people thrive when they depended on each other, when they supported one another more. You know, we thrive more. And now that these people have taken away that support, that, you know, that codependence that we had on one another, they put themselves in that position. They pretty much divide us, because now what you're doing, you're fighting for position. You're fighting for proximity to not just whiteness, proximity to opportunity. You know what I mean? And when you're fighting for proximity to opportunity, who are you competing against? You're competing against your own brothers and sisters. You're not competing against them, because they call the shots. You know what I mean? They always call the shots. So it's up to us to sort of like, you know, realize that this shit needs to end. And how do we end it? By educating ourselves. You know what I mean? By learning, you know, their tactics and how we can. I gotta grab something right quick. How we can overcome all this shit. If we're not overcoming any of that, man, we got a long road ahead of us. I swear. And I'm a fighter, man. I've been fighting for a while now, and sometimes I get tired because I don't feel like people are listening. I don't think people are taking, you know, taking heed of my words, or at least my research experience and all that I've gone through to try to see if I can, you know, at least enlighten the next generation. You know what I mean? My teachers have been many different people, you know, from Muhammad Ali to Colin Kaepernick to Jean-Jacques Dessalines to Malcolm X, Dr. King, Denmark VC, and so many others. You know, I do the research so I'm better equipped to deal with the situations that we have to deal with on a daily basis. And unfortunately, you know, I'm left, you know, sometimes I feel like I'm left out, you know, to dry by the people who should support me the most, because I'm not big on uniting everybody. You know what I mean? My primary goal is always to focus on, you know, black people first, because we have a long way to go. As much as we want to be inclusive, we got a lot of work to do on us. You know, we can't include everybody else, you know, until we work on ourselves. And that's my goal, trying to remove the prejudices, the biases, you know, the subgroups, you know, the tags and the other names that were forced upon us. You know, we honor these people in every way. You know what I mean? In every way, they appropriate our culture. We elevate them. You know, oh, he got soul. Then y'all want to throw a fucking cookout. You know what I mean? Y'all not paying attention to the fact that our ancestors were forced to learn new languages, you know, new way of life, new everything. We don't elevate that. You know, we don't celebrate that. You know what I mean? I'm different, and I just think that once I don't expect 100% of people to be enlightened, but we need a strong amount of black folks globally, you know, especially in the black diaspora, to wake up and understand what's being done to us. You know what I mean? And I would love to spend my time doing a lot more videos and write more books, but you know, there's a life. You know what I mean? There are people to feed. So I can't spend too much time on social media, you know, to try to, you know, enlighten everybody all the time, because I'm not getting the support. Yeah, if I could sell 100,000, 200,000 books every time I come out with a book, because my books are informative, right? If I could sell 1 million books each time that I put a book out, then I can dedicate my time to writing, to research, to educating, and doing all the things that I love to do. I don't want to fucking build houses. You know what I mean? That's not my, you know, joy. It's something that I do to survive, you know? And my joy is this, you know, having, you know, conversation with black folks, teaching black people, writing books, you know, and making sure we understand the system that's basically, you know, in place to marginalize, subjugate, exploit, oppress, you know. That's what I enjoy doing, but I can't do that without, you know, financial support. I'm not asking people to donate to my whatever Cash App. I don't do any of that shit. You know what I mean? I wanted to build free black world because my videos are, you know, censored. My accounts are shadow banned. So I can't speak freely on their platforms. I wanted to build my own platform. You know what I mean? But without support, that's not happening. And I don't really care to own it, to be honest with you. If anybody, any of these guys that are millionaires, billionaires can put their fucking heads together, you know, get beyond their ego and say, hey, this is a necessity, not just for the black community here, but for the entire black diaspora. You know what I'm saying? And it's not as if they would lose money investing in something like that. Because what's his name is worth what, 250 freaking $billion? You know what I mean? Zuckerberg and Elon Musk is almost a trillionaire because of social media and his electric cars, you know. But social media is very lucrative. And I'm not even understanding why these people, I can't be the smartest guy in the room. You know what I mean? Like, I can't be the only person with a vision to see that, oh, if we did this, you know, we can actually create hundreds of thousands of millionaires. I can't be the only person to think like that. You know what I mean? But I don't have the means. If I'm equipped with the means, I can do a lot of things. I can change the world. But I don't have it. You know what I mean? So, and I'm tired of begging for support. Sometimes, you know, I get exhausted trying to help black people. I feel like in order to fight for black people, you sort of like have to go out and establish yourself in other areas. You know what I mean? Become a millionaire, multi-millionaire, doing your own thing, then come back and try to rescue black people. You know? And that's a huge undertaking. And I've been fortunate, you know what I mean? That, you know, I've been able to run many different businesses and have a limited amount of success. But at the same time, you know, I still have family. I have extended family that depend on me. I have people that work for me. They depend on me. You know what I mean? So I can't dedicate resources to things that I don't have. And like I said, I think we need to do a better job with the support, not just for black businesses and the black community, but overall. You know what I mean? Overall, not just when someone gets killed, you know, because if I'm in a position to do something, let's say, okay, Colin Kaepernick, right? He's been able to pay for the autopsy for people who have died, right? Imagine if he wasn't in a financial position to do that. Would we have stepped up? You understand? I want to be able to say, okay, we need a lawyer for this. Let's go get a lawyer. Let's come together and make sure this person didn't commit a crime. We support this person. We get them out. You know what I mean? Or if we need to get somebody, you know, charged for a crime, you know, we make sure that person, you know, gets charged. But it has to be done. There don't sacrifices being made on our part. You know what I mean? We haven't walked out. We haven't boycotted shit. You know, we haven't come together to say, okay, let's destroy this particular system, you know, or entity, because this is what they've done to us. I'm not talking about Target. Target is not destroyed. You know, I know y'all think we've done so much. Target is not. We haven't done shit. Target is thriving again. You know what I mean? And excuse me, we're so used to symbolic victories, whatever little step we take, we see it as something that is huge. But we have so much more power. We can accomplish so much more, but we just can't see it. We don't understand how the world functions as it relates to our own subjugation and marginalization by the system. You know what I mean? Once we start to figure that shit out, then it won't be easily, it won't be as easy to sort of like recruit, your regular coons, your puppets, your sellouts, because we're creating our own stream of income. We're building something. They want, if you're not building anything, nobody wants to be part of that shit. This is why a lot of people want to disconnect themselves from Africa, because Africa, there's not a nation in Africa that's like a superpower. You know what I mean? But once Africa, the continent, once they come together and decide, okay, we're going to be the United States of Africa, then they become a superpower. 95% of people, as opposed to 5%, will be proud of their African heritage. But all that has to do with support. These people have managed to divide us, because with division, you can't support one another when you're divided. It just doesn't happen. I don't want to keep ranting, so hopefully y'all enjoy this video. Please follow the channel. I got more videos coming. Y'all have a good one.